Means that this conversation is going to go however it needs to go. I'm just going to trust in the process and trust in this. But also, we have an incredible lineup of speakers who will be able to give all the context that is needed in terms of this discussion, especially around methane being the emergency brake that is needed at the moment. We are here, though, at the Australian Pavilion, and so I do want to start by acknowledging the traditional owners of the lands that we are meeting on. One of the things that I've discovered being here in Belém is that Belém is one of the first Portuguese colonies here on the Amazon. And especially as we're talking about climate in the context of fossil fuels, one thing we know to be true is that every conflict, every issue, this climate crisis, everything can be traced back to the dispossession of indigenous people from their land for extraction, for resources, and for power. And so we continue to hold them in our framing and understanding of all of the work that we're doing. This conversation is about methane as the emergency brake on warming, the global momentum that's being built up for it, and Australian leadership on it. At the beginning of this COP, we heard the UNSG talk about where we're at the moment. He shared some truths about us being on a trajectory where we can see overshoot of 1.5 happen as soon as early 2030s. And so one thing we know to be true as Pacific people especially is that we need to do everything we can to bring us back onto the trajectory of 1.5. And reduction in methane is seen as that emergency brake that is needed right now. We're really lucky today to be joined by an incredible panel of speakers to be able to break down what is happening and also to give us an understanding of how this looks moving forward. We're going to be joined today by the CEO of the Global Methane Emission, Mr. Marcelo Mena. We also have the head of the Secretary of the United Nations Environment Programme, Climate and Clean Air Coalition, Ms. Martina Otto. We're also joined by the Executive Director of the Institution for Global Decarbonisation Progress, Ms. Hu Min. And we're also lucky to be joined today by the Honourable Minister, Dr. Mai Natalia, who is the Minister of Home Affairs, Climate Change and Environment from the Government of Tuvalu. We're going to have an opportunity to hear from each of our speakers first, and then I'll go into a bit of a discussion after. But to frame this discussion, I'm going to invite the Minister up to give us some opening remarks. He's going to talk about, rather than try to wing this, I'm going to read exactly what it says on this paper. There's been much talk from key Pacific nations, France, Barbados, and the others about the need for a binding global methane agreement. May is going to talk about some of his views on this goal, what must be a COP31 presidency for Australia and the Pacific secure, if we're going to consider this to be a success, and also what leadership from the Pacific states can look like in order to secure a global agreement on methane. And excuse the feedback, but I think that's okay. Let's see. Great. I think this is a If you think this is bad, you should see how it's going over the one I put in there. But this is how things work at COP. We just have to try and adapt to things as we go. But I'd like to hand over to the Honourable Minister from Tuvalu, who will give us his opening remarks, just based on some of these questions.
Test, Mike. Thank you so very much, Joe, for the opportunity, and I would also like to take the opportunity to congratulate the organizer of this event. So again, thank you so much for the opportunity for me representing Tuvalu and to say a few remarks on this very important event. The issue of methane, before I read some of my talking points, the issue of methane has been embedded into our national discussions and also at the international stage, at the UNGA. I also had the opportunity to open the keynote message at the Adaptation Future in Christchurch, which I believe to be the biggest adaptation meeting in the world. And I was able to, in my speech, I was able to talk about methane in my speech. But anyway, I will go straight into some of my talking points, which I believe this will set the scene to the discussion. Let me start by setting the stage. We came to this COP with the expectation of new, more ambitious NDCs, and as required by the Paris Agreement. What we have is a massive ambition gap, where even if all the new NDCs are fully implemented, we are on the road to 2.3 to 2.5 degrees Celsius. And considering the chance of feedback and tipping points, this might even be conservative predictions. On top of that, there is also a huge implementation gap. Many countries have targets, but the policies, finance, access to technology and governance to deliver them are weak, if not absent. Overshoot of 1.5 is no longer an uncertainty. The question how far and how long, the answer to both may be less important to developed countries. For vulnerable countries like Tuvalu, our human rights, our economy, our infrastructures hang in the balance of every degree of overshoot and every year beyond the 1.5. This is why we are here, and we are here to talk about methane. As the science clearly shows, methane mitigation is the only scalable, near-term solution capable of rapidly slowing global temperature rise and buying time for long-term carbon dioxide decarbonization strategies to take effect. Now let me make an important caveat here. We are not saying to stop actions on carbon dioxide. No. On the contrary, we are saying that without methane actions, we may lose the chance of holding the line on 1.5 degrees Celsius. But carbon dioxide mitigation must also remain a priority. If not one or the other, it is both a full throttle ahead. The numerous voluntary pledges on methane, 11 of them at our most recent count, are failing to deliver reductions. What the world needs is a stronger, more reliable solution to deliver results. That is why mandatory measures comes in. They are not optional. We are no longer in a world where we can give emitters a choice, a global leadership. It is time to get serious about our actions. A binding global methane agreement would be the most effective pathway to deliver real progress on this urgent issue. However, we must also be pragmatic about the current geopolitical realities as seen in the plastic negotiations. I so happen to be there. Consensus on a legally binding instrument can take years, time that vulnerable nations like ours simply do not have. In the interim, we must start ramping up actions and results. A strong political declaration and solution-oriented pathway forward could serve as an important step to elevate methane mitigation on the global agenda, build momentum, and pave the way towards a future binding framework. We do not have the luxury of time, ambiguity, and complacency. For COP31 to be a success, the presidency must secure both immediate actions through political commitment and a clear roadmap toward binding obligations. Because the 1.5 is the lifeline for PCs. Integrities require us to insist that countries stop talking about ambition and start delivering it, especially the major emitters and fossil fuel exporting nations. In the 2025 PIF, or the Pacific Island Forum Declaration, Pacific leaders made a commitment to advocate and support global actions to address short-lived climate pollutants, in particular methane emissions. So as to safeguard the shared future of the Blue Pacific, our message to this is to ensure that COP31 presidency with Australia, finger crossed, and we'll pray that Australia Pacific will host COP31, must include a credible methane action. And given the Pacific track record of shifting global norms from the 1.5 fight to the Vanuatu ICJ campaign and to the Loss and Damage Fund, we must also take the lead in methane action. Cutting methane is our fastest, most effective lever for near-term climate stability because it is short-lived. Rapid cuts in methane can quickly slow warming as decarbonize our economies, helping to avert dangerous climate tipping points. The ICJ-AO transformed Pacific Moral Authority into legal authority. The ICJ confirms states have a legal duty to prevent transboundary climate harm, including acting on short-lived climate pollutants like methane. This provides legal grounds to pressure major emitters and fossil fuel exporters. We can now argue credibly that inaction, including on methane, is not only immoral but unlawful. We need and we intend to use the foundation of ICJ-AO to diplomatically call for binding methane commitments, ensure that all relevant international forums and institutions are working towards methane mitigation in the conjunction with carbon dioxide mitigation. And of course, we need to demand accountabilities from countries and companies that export fossil fuels but fail to curb methane leakage. And thank you so much.
Thank you to Minister. Here we're seeing a handshake that was actually echoed earlier on this year, where Marcelo and Minister Maina first met in Canberra, and that actually has kicked off the momentum that has happened within our region. And this year for us, seeing our leaders commit for the first time to working towards a binding methane agreement. And so on that sense, I'd also like to invite Marcelo Mena up to the microphone to give his opening remarks.
So I have some slides, so I'll... Great. So I'll be brief, but I'll show you some of the things that bring it together, why the methane topic is so important. So it's contribute to 0.5 degrees, but also we can track it from space. This is really important to know because we can now look at plumes where the pollution is with some different satellites. So Carbon Mapper is releasing the ranking of the top emitting plumes globally today. We have Methane Sat, which was able to also measure at a very fine way. And also we have these other traditional satellites. But I'm just going to speak about it once because there is this story that I think is great because you could see where the methane emissions are occurring. And then many times you have neighbors that are complaining about the bad air of landfills. And so you could use interventions and document the reductions of emissions. But that only doesn't mean a reduction of emissions. It also means happier neighbors. And so that's something that really resonates with a lot of policymakers because it's an additional value of this. And so what we've seen from the different science is that if we only focus on carbon dioxide, we really don't know how much overshoot we're going to have. We really need to stop emissions for things that will reduce temperature faster. And so those trajectories can really mean different temperature outcomes. So if we don't know what's going to happen by 2050, why are we doing this, right? Because essentially, if we don't focus on these short-lived species, we guarantee there will be no temperature reduction until the end of the century. And if you think climate denial is hard now, just think about it when we go 80 years without a single year that's cooler than the previous. And so methane itself, altogether, can help reduce around 0.3 degrees and has multiple benefits. This is from an upcoming report that's going to be released by the CCAC. But there's one number that I really think is really important because that once we have temperature reduction, we could also estimate the climate damage avoidance under the NGFS methodology that estimates that the climate-related damage on GDP. And so many of us have struggled for many years of looking into methane and bringing it front in ideas and front in line using a concept called GWP20. But many people shoot that idea down because they think it's for multiple reasons, including major agriculture producers that think that they don't want to be put on the spotlight, or sometimes people that think this is about avoiding action on CO2, which is not the right thing. So to cut across this, I developed a methodology to estimate the temperature MAC curve, which allows us to prioritize what are the temperature reducing measures that we should do. And so the methodology is basically transforming the emissions into temperature reduction with radiative forcing, and there's other things in an upcoming paper. But the result is that we have 31 measures that could reduce over a degree of temperature, and it's a combination of clean technology, deforestation avoidance, and the combined benefits from reducing emissions from methane from sectors that we don't think of them as methane emitting or warming emitting. For example, wood burning, the combined methane and black carbon emissions are significant, and they have a very specific air pollution issue that they're addressing. And so the top measures, if you look at the ones that are the most cost effective, are things that you wouldn't realize. Clean cooking. No beating around the bush trying to fix dirty cook stoves. Electric, straight up, cheaper, more convenient, and that's actually one of the most cost negative measures. Food banking. We bring more food to the table. Half of the food emissions nobody eats. All the aerobic rice research things that we're looking at, if we adopt them and expand them, then the lower cost of using less water when we price water correctly, rice production and aerobic rice production is actually cost negative too. Agricultural birding prevention, cold chain, most of these things are very positive. EV delivery, electric buses, and this one I got from a meeting discussing with an official from China who was saying, I asked him, how are we going to reduce emissions from agriculture? And he said something I do personally, which is, I eat beef, but every time I eat pork, it's 70% reduction of emissions at half the cost. So half cost negative. And if you do it like in very personal terms, a steak is like an SUV. We're trying to fix that steak to turn it into an electric car. But a pork is like driving an electric car in terms of emission reductions in equivalent. So, and then you have these other measures, and then the onshore and PV is included too, and then the feed additives also are part of it. Another thing to consider is that avoided emissions from decarbonization. This is not against decarbonization. Decarbonization supports the reduction of black carbon. It supports the reduction of methane. And the upcoming CCAC report on this will show that decarbonization is already helping reduce methane emissions from the avoided demand. And so the upstream avoided temperature could actually contribute to almost 20% more reduction of emissions from these things. So essentially, clean tech, great, let's do it. But methane, black carbon, deforestation avoidance, and HFCs are the full emergency brake. So while I am leading an institution that benefits from it only being about methane, it's about methane and so many other things. And so one initiative that we launched today is, you saw this organic waste diversion, food banking, anaerobic digestion, composting. These are measures that we need to consider. And we're not even considering the cost of avoided transportation. If we reduce organic waste by diverting organic waste from landfills in this new initiative, that's around 1/10 of a degree that we could reduce by itself. And then natural gas, same thing goes, depends on where we get it. It's how much emissions we reduce. This is what they say, we're the bridge to a cleaner tomorrow, but if you're getting it from a place that has high emissions, it's not a bridge, it's a roadblock. And so we need to really consider those emissions. And an upcoming paper that's released Monday that I wrote for OECD and Climate Club, also they asked me what happened with other commodities. Well, same goes. Industrial heating, way dirtier with leaky oil and gas. DRI, steel production, way leakier with oil and gas that's leaky. And then same goes with ammonia, fertilizer production, hydrogen. So the thing is, with this, we could say, when everybody says natural gas is a transition, full stop, unless you reduce those methane emissions. You just got to stop them from saying that because they're emboldened. They think that coal is going down, they're going to replace it. And there is a world in which there will be higher natural gas production and lower coal, and emissions will go lower, but only if methane emissions are addressed. If they're not, it's just a charade. And so that's why this Near Zero Methane Coalition that was put together by the UK to join the EU and endorsed by Canada, by the Latin American OLADE Ministerial Group, and others, is a way to do it. And that's the way that we pull the emergency brake on climate. Thanks.
Thank you, Marcelo. Next up, we have Ms. Humin, who's the Executive Director of the Institute of Global Decarbonization Program.
Thank you very much. Very pleased to be here. My presentation is a bit... Continue? Sorry, technical.
Yes, I think it might be easier for us to change the sequence rather than the technical guys change the PowerPoint. So,
actually, quite a bit of the presentation. Well, I don't want to make it too duplicative. So anyway, I'm Martina Martino-Otto, the head of the Secretariat of the Climate and Clean Air Coalition. We're a partnership, and I think there's a slide that may come eventually. Okay. Well, so we're a coalition of now 100 countries and over 130 non-state actors. That includes IGOs and civil society, all active in tackling super pollutants, and that's methane, black carbon, tropospheric ozone, and hydrofluorocarbons. And we've added as well nitrous oxide to the game. And why are we busy on this? And I think I don't have to go into much detail because Marcelo has given us a fantastic overview of this. But the essence is we will not be able to get back to 1.5 without taking decisive action on the short-lived climate pollutants plus nitrous oxide. It's just simply not in the cards because of the timeframes that we look at. So tackling these is a matter of time and temperature. And for the Pacific region, it means as well it's a matter of survival. I think that was a very, very strong statement that we got from Barbados in the World Leaders Summit segment as well, and things going forward. So I think it's critical to highlight that. We started off with a quote from the Secretary General, and he did say, well, we're on the highway to hell with the pedal on the gas. And actually, what this agenda is, it's the handbrake. And we know we have it, and we're running right in front of the wall, and we're not pulling it. But if we were pulling it, well, and then we turn the steering wheel, that's what we need to do, right? So immediate brake, but forcefully, not little by little. And I would like to highlight what we have seen over the past. CCAC started 2012, very small, 6 countries. So it's an enormous success, but it's too slow. It's too slow. We're not getting there quickly enough. So we're not pulling the handbrake fast enough. Who would do that? Getting in front of the wall. And that's why we have a few things that we have in the pipeline to accelerate that, and I get to this. But this is the price that is out there. So it is about avoided warming. It is about snow and ice caps protected. It's about the rate of sea level rise being reduced. But it's also very immediately about people's health, because the things that are co-emitted, and then methane as a precursor to tropospheric ozone, has a key impact on people's health. And that is something we need to factor in much more. Everybody talks about the heating planet and what that means for health as well. So here the measures come in right away as well. And the last point that I want to highlight is about food security. And one thing is, of course, that the adaptation of our nature is not keeping up fast enough with the change that we see. So that has an impact. But on top of it, tropospheric ozone exposure to plants means that their growth is impeded. That has a direct impact on crops, and not only on crops, also on what we think about carbon sinks, for example. But 52 million tons avoided crop losses annually is what we're looking at. So that's a major contribution to food security. And all this is doable by action in, so that's the slide on the partnership, but all that is doable by taking a number of decisive measures across key sectors. And the measures are straightforward. They're using proven and existing technologies. And for the most of them, they're low cost as well. And that takes us to, this is low-hanging fruit. We keep talking about that, but people are not picking it up. So what do we do wrong in not getting this to the next level? So those are some examples of studies that we have done. A lot of that has been quoted, but these are the sectors, and it cuts across with what Marcelo has shown you. Under these sectors, we have different key actions that are to be taken. And for example, we hear the biggest and easiest way to do it is in the fossil fuel sector, to cut there. And it is about leakage repair, it is about changing operations, venting and flaring, and so on. There it's not even an argument about where's the money for the investments coming from, because it's a wealthy industry per se. There is an issue with national oil companies where it's a bit more difficult, but we have the World Bank partnership to help in that respect as well. But I don't want to stop at that. People keep talking about, oh, and then in waste it's more difficult, and even more difficult in agriculture. But in waste, it's a world full of opportunities. If we turn organic waste into this thinking that it is a resource, and that's behind now that Marcelo has already talked about, no organic waste gives a strong signal that is what we need to aim to. And if we turn it around, it's no longer about only looking at the end of pipe with, okay, we do methane capture at landfill, because we'll never be able to capture all the methane at landfill. There's always stuff escaping. So we keep feeding the beast. We keep, instead of feeding people with, for example, the food waste and the food loss that we see, instead of feeding people, we feed climate change and we feed the beast with the landfills. So we need to take things upstream. And the moment we take it upstream, we have circular economy opportunities that come into that. There's like soldier fly farming that you can do from very small scale to big scale. as well, turning organic waste into protein. So there's a revalorization story behind it. It becomes someone's business. It's no longer a cost issue. It's someone's business. And it creates jobs. And there's numbers out there. It's very interesting. There's a whole area around composting that actually then can help even with urban tree cover that helps reduce urban heat island effect. So we have to think more in a systems perspective as well. Again, it's a world full of opportunities, and I won't go into all the details. And then we have the agricultural sector, and there it's getting, for a lot of people, very scary. It's very sensitive. We know that, but there's a lot of opportunities still that we haven't fully harnessed that go along with productivity gains on the one side, or that are as much adaptation measures that we need to do eventually anyhow. And that's the case, for example, when we look at rice farming with alternate wet and drying, for example, where it's a measure to help address the scarcity of water that we're increasingly running into as well. So it's just to give you a snapshot of what's out there. So this is the CCAC. Well, there's a part of advocacy, there's a part on science, and you saw 2 examples of scientific reports. A lot of the numbers that people tend to quote are actually coming from our reports. And we also have a trust fund, thanks to supporters, including the Global Methane Hub, but also bilateral contributions. And that's the split up of the funding. And you see, it's quite interesting, there's a lot actually of emphasis on agriculture and on waste. There's very little on fossil fuel, but that's because we made a very clear choice that on fossil fuels, the only thing we actually support is regulation, helping countries to put into place, to devise regulation and to help enforce it. And that's not the biggest price factor. That's why it's a smaller share, but there's a lot of activity going on in this space as well. Something else that we have started is the TEEP, and that's inspired by the Montreal Protocol. TEEP stands for Technology and Economic Assessment Panel. The idea behind it is to identify technologies that are interesting, are promising, but underinvested in, and to close a knowledge and a finance gap. So we describe the technologies, we look at business models that exist for them, we look at the different scales, we look at policy barriers, and we look at the cost. What would it take to get them to scale? And that's an open invitation to everybody to help us identify the right technologies that are promising, that are out there, and to work together with us, because it lives from a community perspective, private sector engagement in that as well, to get the numbers right and to help us get things to scale and to actually present it in a way that it speaks to the financiers. And something that we're very, very proud of, we've launched earlier this week, but we had a meeting this morning with all the countries that are participating in this, and that's our super pollutant country accelerator. 7 countries to start with, and we think that can be a real game changer in what we're doing. It is actually putting the support that we've been able to provide to countries on a different footing, making it a much bigger thing in one go. Countries get a larger injection of funding, but they also get a team, so it becomes someone's jobs. And we know that all of this action lives or dies with the actions that we are able to take individually and collectively. So within the government, support, institutional strengthening coming along with that to drive the agenda. You see the countries here. So we have Brazil, Cambodia, Kazakhstan, Indonesia, Mexico, shouldn't have started it, South Africa, and Nigeria. Voila. Here we go. And I think this is a real way to accelerate. And by the way, that's also inspired by the Montreal Protocol. And my last slide is on what we see in terms of actions. And we have seen a real build-up in terms of momentum. And you all know about the Global Methane Pledge, which was a real milestone for getting above the radar with the methane action. But we did see summits on methane and non-CO2 gases, twice held between the US and China as the 2 driving forces. This year, it was held by the UK, Brazil, and China. So there is something that's going on that level. We would love to see more engagement. We think it takes head of state level engagement to drive these things forward. But anyway, it's a good first step in. We launched something else, and that's the fossil fuel statement in this. So there's now on the waste side, and that's a continuation from what COP presidency 29, Azerbaijan, had done. And so we have a fossil fuel statement. The intent of it is methane performance standards, and I say standards. They can be set nationally, regionally. It's not to put one size fits all on everybody. The market may actually go towards that direction, but there's a lot of leverage for everybody to decide what it would be, how it would look, and the idea is shared responsibility and partnership. So how can we use this market lever that we see, but in a way that we do help countries devise their own policies to help them get the national oil companies to do the right measures, that it actually works out. And there's, I think, a really good possibility as well for Australia to lead in this area because of well, the actions taken already back home on coal, but also on gas, and the potential there is to take this forward. And the last one that I want to highlight is something that will only be launched next week, so you get a sneak preview of that, and that's in the agricultural sector, a fertilizer declaration that is carried by the UK and Brazil. But I think there is a lot of potential in stepping into that, and that ties back into also China's interest in working on nitrous oxide very forcefully as well. And I think with that, I've come to the end of my quick run-through of what we do and what we've seen at the COP and also what needs to happen. Thank you.
Thank you very much. My name is Hu Ming from IGDP. It's a analytical think tank from China. We have been tracking non-CO2 greenhouse gases emission and mitigation potential from China for over 10 years, but covering all gases, not only methane, but also other pollutants, including black carbon. So I'm very pleased to be here and share some of our observations. So before COP, I think the big news, one of the big news was that China submitted the new NDC and aims to reduce economy-wide net greenhouse gas emission, by 2035, 7 to 10%. This is people ask how significant it is. We're always struggling with the number of what is the reduction, 30%, 20%. But I think to me, one of the top change is we cover the other greenhouse gases. And the significance of this is it's a huge amount of emission. So the NDC, the new NDC regulates basically additional 2.7 billion CO2 equivalent, including 1.6 billion CO2 equivalent of methane mitigation. And if you know the global emission country by country, you can know this is more or less a country level emission. And also mainly the Chinese emission coming from the energy sector, half from agriculture and a little bit from waste. So, but this is not new action, because for this kind of efforts, China is started a very long time ago. Of course, it's the first rural biomass digester built in 1970s. It's very interesting. It was built by President Xi when he was as a country lead. But now China, in fact, has been taking action regulating greenhouse methane mitigation after Paris Agreement. Even though we did not have the target for a long time covering methane, but the action has been always included in the NDC. And it's a holistic approach with tangible measures. I think some facts and data to show what is the difference of Chinese action and how holistic it is. China methane mitigation is mainly from coal-related emission, and it's very different from other countries. So then China will have a different approach, also with this kind of status. But on the other hand, this is very, very important, because in China we always work on coal bed methane. But the key thing is most of the emission coming from low concentration CMM, which is so hard, very, very hard and challenging to recycle, and the cost is super high. I'll come back to this later. And if you look at the emission trajectory in the past couple of years, in fact, we can see that's the dark blue bar. In fact, the emission level has been more or less plateaued in the past years. But the agriculture, from the agriculture, and also I think I want to say is for coal bed CMM, it's mainly from a very small number of provinces with a lot of coal mines. But agriculture emission coming from all provinces. So that is more, distributed. But we also have several provinces, like it's very small words, I'm sorry for that, but several provinces with a little bit a higher level of agriculture emission. So what is the policy progress? I think it's not just coming from this COP. Before this COP, in last NDC submitted in 2021, China already committed to issue to regulate methane reduction. So in 2023, there was the first national methane action plan. And in 2024, there's a very important policy breakthrough was to tighten the CMM methane emission standard from 30% down to 8%. So that means before anything, the concentration of the emission from the coal mine below 30%, it will be just fugitive. But now you need to recycle, and it's a very big amount of emission captured. And when we speak of a holistic approach, so it's not only central government. People may think in China it's a very vertical management system, and anything happen or asked by the national government, things will happen automatically. In fact, not. But the provincial level effort matters a lot. And after the national policy, there is many subnational action have taken, carried out in different provinces. But only Shanxi province, they are focused on coal CMM, but most of the other provinces that already, like we have 9 provincial level methane reduction plan now, but the majority of the other provinces, they mainly focus on agriculture sector. But if you don't China has 30 provinces, so it's 1/3 of the provinces covered. And the subnational, also there's a lot of actions taking on. I don't think I have that much time to cover it. So we have done, IGP publish non-CO2 mitigation review more or less every year, every 2 years, and we also collect the best practices from different sectors. So this is in Shanxi province, that's the CMM. And this is climate-friendly rice farming in Sichuan and Yunnan. It's not only, reduce methane reduction, but also improve the productivity, in fact, the yield. Manure management in Jiangxi. This is Yunnan province. So basically what I'm trying to say is it's not only number and policy, and it's a lot of action going on. But if we look at the future, we want to have, fast, deep reduction of methane in China. It's very challenging. I think that's the focus for us. People sitting here. So after we achieve, get the low-hanging fruit in China, basically like high concentration CMM, of course it will be recycled because it's resources. You can sell it for money. But all the others, it's cost, and it needs to be captured with very much effort. So this is our analysis. You just look at here. It's a deep decarbonization pathway. We will achieve more or less what's required, like 13% by 2035. But this is a scenario. It's not a real action yet. As I said, you can see we need to double the CMM reduction, and we also need to increase dramatically the livestock sector reduction. And this are where it's very expensive. As I said just now, the low concentration CMM will be the huge challenge, because after we capture the 60% of CMM, which is a high concentration. So as the time running out, so I think that my key observation is that before China's methane reduction results were mainly from co-benefit of other sustainable development goals, like air quality, resources utilization, energy transition. We have a huge electrification effort in China, like the building sector electrification rate has been gone up a lot, and all of that reduced the coal consumption. And all of that helps, but it's not really taking methane as the object of reduction. So for the new, for future, we really need to treating methane as the emission reduction objective. And this is the significance of China's new NDC covering methane, because now you have a goal, and we will have to work on it. I don't think we need to struggle with the number of the goal and the ambition level. It's with this commitment, with this regulation, we cover this under the regulatory framework, and then that will be a quite different way of working on this. So we need to focus on low concentration CMM, as I just mentioned. Basically now, some of the subnational action already cover 2% to 8% concentration CMM, which is great, and also the high-cost agriculture. I think I don't have time to go into details. So I was asked to talk about China's contribution. I think in future, maybe, that's my suggestion, but this is my expectation. It's probably not happening yet. If we look at all the clean tech development in the past year, we all know EV, battery, renewable. To what extent China's, because it's just a huge amount, and huge amount of basically emitters we need to work with, and all of this innovation, and if we can work, what kind of innovation, like we need to trust China's innovation and manufacturing capacity, how to drive the cost. Sometimes it's not only manufacture, but also know-how, The low cost, driving down the cost might be another contribution from China. I think I'll stop here. Thank you very much for this opportunity. If you are interested in our report, please scan here. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you everybody for that. Unfortunately, because of our tech issues and the time frame, we're being kicked out, so the next event can be bumped in. Starts now. But if there are any questions, I hope the panelists can remain around just to answer some of those while you're with me. Thanks for joining us.